I want to watch this video. Neoliberal shill or real leftist. Chile's new president. So
Political parties, but you
if
can't.
you haven't been paying attention, the elections in Chile were recently, and they elected basically a social democratic candidate, like a sort of soft left-wing candidate, not a hard socialist, not a hard anti-imperialist, not a Marxist-Leninist. So there's been debate among Marxists as to how much this should be supported. Carlos and I supported it. Basically be like Bernie Sanders, winning election in Chile. That would be the U.S. equivalent, which obviously if Bernie Sanders would have won in the U.S., that would have been much better than Trump or Biden. So, I think it's something good overall, even though I'd rather see a hardcore anti-imperialist Marxist-Leninist candidate take power. This is still a step in the right direction. So let's see what this video has to say from Katie Halper.
This weekend in Chile, Gabriel Boric, a former student organizer, defeated Jose Antonio Cast, the son of a Nazi and a fan of Pinochet, which is nice and well-rounded.
Classic Latin American right-winger. Buddy and admirer of Pinochet.
I think. We also lost someone last week, Lucia Iriart, who was the widow of Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet. She died at the age of 99. He died at 91, proving that only the good die young. But instead of having a moment of silence, I thought we could have a moment of celebration. So everyone get out your pots and pans, cover your ears. Okay, so that's a celebration for the election as well as for the all too late death of Pinochet's widow.
Peace out,
Pinochet. To a lovely wife of a dictator who disappeared thousands of people.
Actually, I was explaining to my family yesterday over Christmas how Margaret Thatcher was best buddies with Pinochet all the way up until the end. So, like, Ronald Reagan obviously supported Pinochet, the murderous right-wing Chilean dictator. But he was, I guess, smart enough to not go to tea parties with him and not to make public appearances next to Pinochet. Whereas Margaret Thatcher would, like, invite Pinochet to party or, like, go out to eat and have tea and visit the country. As this dude Pinochet was murdering and torturing Chilean leftists and socialists en masse, including rounding up 10,000 Chilean socialists and murdering them in the country's national soccer stadium upon taking election. And that was Margaret Thatcher, the leader of the UK, her best buddy.
To speak to us about the recent elections, the historical context, and what it all means are two amazing guests. Pablo Vivanco, a Toronto-based Chilean journalist, filmmaker, and the director of the great documentary Chile Awakens, The End of the Neoliberal Miracle, as well as historian and journalist and executive director of Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Vijay Prashad, who was recently in Chile and met Gabriel Boric. So welcome, Vijay and Pablo. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
It's great to be with you. Thanks a lot.
I wanted to start with you, Pablo, to talk about the significance of this victory, of this election that just happened. What does it mean for Chile, for South America, for the world?
Yeah, well, I think, that what it means is encapsulated a little bit. The promise of what Boric said in his speech on election night, that Chile was the birthplace of neoliberalism and it'll be its tomb.
He said, if Chile was the birthplace of neoliberalism, it will also be its grave. Which is a reference to Augusto Pinochet, who received economic advice from Milton Friedman and the Chicago Boys, who are these right-wing neoliberal economists trained at the Chicago School of Economics, who the U.S. basically gave free rein over Chile's economic system. And actually, about 10 years later, Pinochet ended up renationalizing some of the companies who were sold off to Western multinationals because the effects of the neoliberal reforms on the Chilean population were so negative. Unemployment was anywhere from 20 to 30%. Malnutrition shot up. Education was way down. And the only thing that increased was the amount of wealth that corporations were making, which is why the right-wing economists labeled this the Chilean miracle. And they said, look, trickle-down economics work. Look how much money Western corporations made off of Chile. Meanwhile, 20 to 30% of the people are unemployed and they're living in poverty. So, That is what neoliberal right-wing economists consider success, right? It doesn't matter how high unemployment is. It doesn't matter if people are starving. As long as corporations are making a profit, that equals success. So right-wing libertarian economists often look at the Pinochet era and they say, this was the greatest economic miracle in history. This was such a great economic system that Milton Friedman gave Chile. And it's just a total myth. As is now proven by the fact that Chile has elected a candidate who said Chile will be the grave of neoliberalism, right? That proves that neoliberalism has not worked. The people want something else.
The election of Boric in and of itself doesn't guarantee that, but I think it is a part of a process that is working towards that, right? So the election of Boric means that the Constitutional Convention can continue to discuss and make proposals that will be coming to the Chilean population next year. And there are many people, and I count myself among them, who are hoping that the Constitutional Convention will include a lot of the things that brought people out into the streets from October 2019 and for many months afterwards, basically until the pandemic brought people into their homes. But Boric, we can talk about.
And Chile also voted recently to overturn the constitution that was implemented under Pinochet. So again, showing their rejection of that era, the neoliberal era of Chile.
Some of the things which perhaps are criticisms of him, some things which are definitely things that we need to watch, that Chilean movements will need to push on. But nonetheless, his election is significant, not only in the fact that Chile does not have basically a fascist as president right now coming in. It's got a very right-wing president currently, but won't have Jose Antonio Cast taking the mantle in March. But Boric is also not. I don't think you can characterize him necessarily in the same way as some of the previous centrist and center-right governments that governed Chile since the 1990s.
And Vijay, what do you have to add to that? And also as someone who was there and you met Boric, so what are your impressions of this election?
I think this is an incredible election. I've often found it puzzling how people can't experience the enormity of something. Chile had a dictatorship, a ruthless, brutal military dictatorship for 17 years. The liberals that came in after the dictatorship essentially passively transferred power. They never went after the criminals who were in the Pinochet administration. It's a culture of impunity.
Very, very interesting talking about the legacy of Chile. And yeah, I see some Western leftists, who are so against Boric, and so against this election in Chile. It's like you have to understand the context of Chile. You have to understand the right-wing military neoliberal dictatorship that was never prosecuted, like he said, who basically, destroyed Chile's economic system, murdered thousands of people at the behest of the U.S., and then never paid for their crimes. Like we said, Pinochet was going to tea parties with Margaret Thatcher and was an esteemed head of state till the end of his life. And he was a murderous, brutal dictator who deserves to sit in a prison cell, or who deserved to sit in a prison cell for the rest of his life. So this is a huge election, even getting the center-left candidate in. And the Communist Party of Chile ran a candidate against Boric in the primary. They lost. Boric won. So then the Communist Party organized for Boric in the general elections. So the Communist Party was greatly involved in making this election happen. And then you have communists in the West, in America, who are like, boo, this guy doesn't meet all my standards, he doesn't meet my checklist of the perfect leader. It's like, okay, but he was good enough for the Communist Party of Chile. He was good enough for them to organize for him. It's still a great victory for them. So why can we not appreciate that as Westerners?
The right wing essentially just entered into this period of democracy as if nothing had happened. It's very hard in that cultural terrain to move a real, genuine left agenda. I've spent a lot of time with Daniel Jadwe, who is a communist leader who ran in the primary, the first round, against Boric to be.
Hey, he's talking about it. Great minds think alike, Vijay.
The candidate of the left. Daniel has some terrific ideas, is very much involved in building a municipal socialism in the area of Recoleta, where he's the mayor. A lot of, positive things, but you've got to win an election in a country which has never, ever looked the dictatorship in the face and uprooted it. At least you can say Nestor Kirchner and Cristina Kirchner in Argentina went after some of the criminals. In Brazil, absolutely no justice for anybody, which is why it was easy for Bolsonaro to walk in there and to praise the dictatorship, 21-year dictatorship in Brazil. In Chile, it was 17 years. It's considerable. Not one of these people went to prison. In fact, Tony Blair, himself a criminal, the Spanish government of Salazar, and the Chilean government of Frey collided, they colluded to let Pinochet escape from Britain, come back to Chile, and die in his bed, almost celebrated. So it's in that context that a young
Wow. Me and Vijay were on the same wavelength there.
man, age 35, student leader, militant, with very progressive ideas, has come to win an election in alliance with the communists. Yes, of course, Gabriel said this and that and the other, but to focus on that is to miss the larger cultural process at work in Chile. And I'm much more interested, my friends, in the cultural process than in this petty scorecard keeping that the US left in particular likes to indulge in. Are you the perfect person? It's not about that. We're in a great process of history. Let's focus on that.
All right, so I don't even know why I started talking.
Change policies. In China,
Because Vijay just said everything that I said, but better. That's crazy. He has denounced basically all existing socialism, including Latin America and China, but he is the guy. The larger party in general is supportive, and the leader of those countries he's condemned have still congratulated him and likely support his win. Yeah. And I mean, Lula in Brazil is very similar. He is said, we're not going to be like Venezuela or Cuba, right? Those are crazy communist countries, or Nicaragua. We're going to form our own path to socialism. And obviously it would be better to have Lula in power in Brazil than the far right winger Jair Bolsonaro, as Vijay was talking about there. Even though Lula's not perfect, even though we would like him to show solidarity with Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, the more Marxist or Marxist-Leninist countries, it's still better than the alternative. It's still better than a far right winger, even if he doesn't, meet our checklist.